What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. We are back doing another prediction video. Today I am in Le Bleu because we are talking about France. I know that's not the right French words for what I just did, but I am all in blue today. So France, talking about those teams. We've done now all of the home nation teams. You want to regard them as that. We're going to expand now out into the Six Nations team. So France had a, would you say a good Six Nations? I think I predicted France to win the Six Nations, actually. They came up a little bit short. They did stop Wales from getting the Grand Slam with that final minute breakdown of Corey Hill. I still hate watching that game back. I did a whole review video on that game, and I still hate it to this day. But France will be happy with how they're going, I think. They went into the Summer internationals now against Australia. They definitely came away with some good wins in that, considering that there were still players missing. They were missing, key players. There's no, Vakatawa. There was no Entomac. There was all these people. Some up-and-coming players, people like Vorki and Makalu. These people are coming up now in this France team and really begin to show off. Of course, there was a whole big dispute about the red card scenario with Coriobetti, and then Australia just absolutely went for that game. I certainly think France have a lot to work on. I don't know whether that was rust coming from the Six Nations into the July internationals, or just whether a lot of the new boys coming in rather than their set team. So they had a little bit to work on for them, which was a bit of a shame. But they will be looking to improve that. That'll lead in now to the Six Nations coming up. They'll want to finish that off. So their first game versus Argentina Le Bleu versus the Pumas. It's going to be a fun game. I'm looking forward to this one. This is a game I don't feel we get to see this one a lot. Again, this doesn't ever seem to work its way into a World Cup for some reason, as I would like to see much more of this sort of game. Argentina having a good July international, beating Wales in both of their games, but Wales very much a B team. Am I making excuses because I'm Welsh? Maybe. But I genuinely think that was that Wales team wasn't built to play that Argentina team, and also didn't really look like they were playing that hard. I don't know why. I really would have liked to have seen a second string team beat a first string Argentina team. I did watch the Argentina versus South Africa game. That was a couple of weeks back now. Argentina didn't really look in that game at all. They were pretty dominated in that game. So Argentina struggling a little bit, but they've certainly got some little sparks in there. People like Pablo Matera is just still killing people out on the field. And it's only, what was it, less than a year ago that Argentina beat New Zealand in a good game as well. Like, it wasn't like a half game. They really went for that and they did well. But Argentina recently slipping off a little bit. I'm sure Sean Edwards won't have been happy with seeing some of the France defence that was in those Australia games, and how some of the performances went in some of the Six Nations as well. But I think France have probably been on the up and up, whereas I think Argentina are sort of beginning to down and sort of mellow out a little bit now. So for me, I think first prediction, I'm going to go for France to beat Argentina. On to the second game, France versus Georgia. Now, Georgia are certainly beginning to get up there now. They're being involved in more competitions where they're playing these Tier 1 nations. They're playing well. They're certainly going hard. We saw some tries against Ireland when they were last time they were out. We've seen Georgia trying to play against South Africa. They had a couple of good moments in that. They were beating the South African scrum a couple of times. Georgia are certainly trying to get more involved, get in there. There's been calls where they should replace Italy in the Six Nations. I don't think they're quite there. It's a shame in this sort of summer series we're not going to get to see Italy versus Georgia. I think that would be a great game. But France versus Georgia, I think for me, I think the gap here might be slightly too big. I think France will probably be able to outdo Georgia. I can imagine it will go pretty much how most Georgian games go against Tier 1 nations. The first 40 they'll be able to hold out, and it's whether they can hold out in that second half. Georgia's mixed it up an awful lot. Sometimes they have their stronger players on the bench. Sometimes they start them straight away and they begin to get weaker towards the end of the game. Sometimes they hold out for longer than they can do. They get some little one-off tries. We saw people like Sharakadze still trying out really, really hard in that team to try and get them scores over the try line. But a lot of the Georgian points can really have opportunities from the posts. I would like to see them kick more towards the post and go for drop goals, try and get those points, keep them ticking over, add pressure onto their team, force the other team to take the 3 points rather than thinking we'll just go for the corner and we'll just keep getting tries. I would like to see that, but for me, I think France has a bit of a class of its own. I can very much imagine this being a second-string France team, though. This is in between an Argentina and a New Zealand game. So it won't be the solid France team that we know and love, but we have seen a second-string France team play in the autumn internationals last year, playing England in the final in a game they should have won. I still maintain that. I lost £400 of potential winning because France didn't get to win that game. I did a 2-hour ranting video on that game, breaking that one down. But I think France's second team is strong enough to be able to cope with a Georgian team, even a first-tier Georgian team. Wales managed to beat them with a pretty second-string team in their last outing against them as well. So I think for this one, I'm going to say a France win over Georgia. And finally, the game a lot of people are waiting to see from this autumn internationals. New Zealand versus France. What a game that's going to be. This is already being talked about now, about whoever wins that game will win the World Cup. I've heard that mentioned. Both these teams playing in the pool stages. This will be the game pretty much to decide who will be first in that pool. No offence to Italy, who I believe are also in the pool with them. But I just see France and New Zealand battling out there for that top position. And whoever wins that one goes on to play, you know, a tough team. You're going to be going up against South Africa, Ireland or Scotland. You know, you'll be trying to probably want to avoid South Africa if you can. I would imagine South Africa are favourites to get to the top of that pool, so you want to be playing probably Ireland or Scotland in that region. So that's why France will be desperate to win that game. And in order to win that game, you've got to beat them now. There's no point playing these big teams if you can't win them in every single game. So, France versus New Zealand, of course, we've had the history of the New Zealand killers in France. We see it a couple of times in history. We've also seen New Zealand run over France a couple of times, which was a little bit sad to see. Going into this game, France, like I said already, not necessarily being 100% on point, whereas New Zealand are looking good. They are looking like they got a lot going on for them. The Super Rugby Aotearoa, they are landing it awfully well. The Crusaders looking really good, and I imagine a lot of that team will transition into this New Zealand team. They've gone on, they've beaten Australia twice in that Bledisloe Cup. They're just looking pretty dominant all round, really. They beat Tonga by 100 and something to nil. They are killing people at the minute. So it's going to be a tough one. I think maybe when it gets round to the World Cup, this game could be a lot closer. But for me, I think at this stage, from what I've seen from France in the Summer Series and what I'm seeing from New Zealand currently against like an Australia, the team that France were barely able to sort of scrape by Australia are getting demolished by New Zealand. So I think for this one, I'm going to call it as a New Zealand win. And there we have it, guys. That's going to be my predictions for the France Autumn Internationals 2021. But like I say in all these videos, of course, this is well over a month away. We haven't even seen the teams that are announced yet. Everything could change from there. It's just a bit of fun to do before the games get kicked off. And that way we can look at it a couple months later and see how many we got right before the teams were even named. But who do you think is going to win these games? Do you think France will win every single game? Do you reckon they'll lose every single game? Win some, lose some? Make sure you drop it down in the comments, because I do like reading through people's comments about how they think the games are going to turn out, how they think it's going to win and stuff. But I'm really looking forward to see a couple of these France games. I think it's going to be some real tooth and nail battles going on. But if you've enjoyed this video, guys, make sure to drop this video a like, and we will be doing the final video pretty soon. So make sure you subscribe to the channel just to keep up to date when all the rugby videos come out. Not just these, but also the other ones when the autumn internationals actually begin. But I hope you all enjoyed today, guys. I will see you next time. Bye bye.